It's a ghost wandering in the brain. Its name is the prion. In October 1986, in Alford, southeast England, a cow suddenly collapsed, convulsing and foaming at the mouth. After several days of painful struggle, it died a miserable death. Veterinarians who arrived on the scene informed everyone that this mysterious disease had been ravaging cattle across Britain for over a year. No one knew where it came from, or how it spread. It was like the Grim Reaper, wandering the earth, randomly selecting an unlucky cow and killing it in this bizarre way. Because the cows showed various symptoms of madness, people called this strange disease mad cow disease. To tackle this unfamiliar plague, all cattle were herded into open fields, killed, ground into mince, and thrown into incinerators at 1,000 degrees Celsius. Yet, they still couldn't stop this relentless reaper from randomly claiming lives. However, the real nightmare was just beginning. In 1995, a young man named Stephen in Edinburgh, UK, suddenly developed the same symptoms as those mad cows. He exhibited madness, incoherent speech, strange facial expressions, and twisted behavior, eventually dying slowly amidst convulsions. Starting with him, hundreds of similar cases emerged in the UK within just a few years. Doctors termed their symptoms variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob Disease, or vCJD. All these patients had consumed beef suspected to be from cows infected with mad cow disease. Clearly, some bizarre pathogen had transmitted from the sick cows to humans through meat consumption. Whether it was mad cow disease or the new vCJD, both had varying incubation periods, some as short as a few months, others as long as several years. At the time, there was almost no way to test living animals or people for the disease. Panic spread rapidly. Farmers doubted whether their cattle were already carriers, and Britons who had long consumed domestic beef were thrown into immense fear. Internationally, British beef was shunned, forcing the UK, once a beef exporter, to spend £3.5 billion annually on beef imports. Yet this still couldn't stop the mysterious pathogen from spreading worldwide. Over the next 10 years, cases of mad cow disease, or vCJD, were reported in France, Spain, the US, Canada, Saudi Arabia, Japan, and other countries. Beyond the public and governments, scientists and doctors worldwide were deeply concerned. Autopsies of infected humans and livestock revealed a common trait. Their brains had become riddled with holes, looking like sponges under a microscope. It was this damage that caused the patient's mental and behavioral abnormalities. Thus, mad cow disease, vCJD, and related conditions could collectively be called transmissible spongiform encephalopathies. As research deepened, experts found that the brains of these victims always contained a highly distinctive protein aggregate. At that moment, people recalled an extremely rare pathogen, the prion. Hello everyone, welcome to Ancient Discovery. If you were to ask me what the most bizarre and mysterious infectious pathogen known to humans is, the prion would probably be my only answer. Even before the UK mad cow disease incident, people already knew a bit about prions. Back in the 18th century, German farmers noticed that some sheep would become crazed. They seemed intensely itchy and would desperately rub their backs against posts or other objects. Then they'd become listless, stop eating, and die. This disease was also contagious. If the sick sheep weren't isolated, the entire flock could become infected. Locals called it scrapie. In 1982, American neuroscientist Stanley B. Prusner isolated a previously unknown pathogen from the brains of sheep infected with scrapie. This pathogen wasn't a virus or a bacteria. It was just a protein molecule, containing no DNA or RNA or any genetic material. He named this pathogen a prion. How could a tiny protein molecule turn a brain into a sponge? The reason sounds almost fantastical. The prion itself isn't particularly toxic, but it has a special trick for spreading. To put it simply, it's like a zombie, but on a molecular level. Let's use mad cow disease as an example. The prion involved, if it comes into contact with a protein in the human brain called PRP, has a chance to transform that PRP protein into a prion like itself. Just like in zombie movies, these newly converted PRP prions will then go on to transform other normal PRP proteins into prions. Normally, cells have a system for dealing with abnormal proteins. But under the overwhelming assault of the rapidly multiplying prion zombies, this system gets exhausted quickly. To make things worse, prions love to clump together, forming large prion protein aggregates. This not only makes it harder to break down these abnormal proteins, but also seriously interferes with normal cell activity, eventually killing the nerve cell they're in. Think that's the end? No, it gets worse. When the nerve cell dies and breaks apart, the prions inside are released, ready to infect surrounding nerve cells. So the nerve cells in the brain fall one by one, like fortresses in a zombie movie. Making matters worse, nerve cells hardly ever regenerate. Once they're dead, they're gone for good. Eventually, large areas of nerve cells die and break down, creating empty holes in the brain. The host, of course, cannot escape death. Since the PRP protein in each individual's brain is slightly different, and due to other factors, each person's ability to fight off prions varies. Under the same conditions, some individuals die miserably, while others remain completely unaffected. So, where does this brain-spongifying pathogen come from? Since prions have no genes, their survival depends entirely on infecting other proteins, just like the plot of a zombie movie. The usual molecular biology tools for tracing origins are useless here. Therefore, we can only look for clues from other research directions. Currently known prions almost always appear in the nervous system, which provides a crucial clue to their origin. In fact, many neurological diseases involve massive nerve death similar to spongiform encephalopathy. For example, the direct cause of Alzheimer's disease, as we commonly know it, is the large-scale death of neurons related to memory. The typical symptoms of Parkinson's disease are caused by the collapse of groups of nerve cells in the brain responsible for transmitting movement signals. As research into these diseases deepens, scientists have found that abnormal proteins always appear in these conditions. For instance, in familial Parkinson's disease, a protein called alpha-synuclein plays a key role. In the brains of patients with familial Parkinson's, alpha-synuclein can occasionally undergo spontaneous misfolding. This misfolded alpha-synuclein has a chance to induce normal alpha-synuclein to misfold in a similar way. Not only that, these misfolded alpha-synuclein proteins also clump together, eventually killing neurons. And when the neurons break apart, these misfolded proteins are absorbed by surrounding neurons, setting off a domino effect of neuronal destruction. Doesn't that sound exactly like how a prion infects? As research continues, more and more proteins with similar characteristics are being discovered, and they are often the masterminds behind various neurological diseases. At this point, we seem to be close to an answer. The only problem is that these proteins are often very fragile. Once they leave the brain environment, they quickly lose their activity. They can only spread between different individuals with a very small chance, if brain tissue from a sick animal is directly injected into another animal's brain. However, in the face of evolution's brute force trial and error, any problem that has a solution is destined to be solved eventually. Among some tribes in Papua New Guinea, a strange disease often broke out. Patients first experienced headaches and joint pain, accompanied by trembling limbs. Then, they gradually developed schizophrenia and memory loss, finally dying of starvation because they couldn't swallow, often while laughing hysterically. The locals called this disease kuru, which means trembling in the local language. The transmission of kuru was linked to the tribal practice of consuming the bodies of deceased relatives. Since women and children were responsible for handling the bodies and typically consumed the brain, they had a much higher probability of contracting kuru than adult men. Perhaps during this long process of evolution, there was one person who mutated a protein that could not only damage the nervous system, but also briefly survive outside the brain environment, even resisting digestion and penetrating the intestinal wall and blood vessel walls. And this might be the common origin story for all prions. Originally, the story should have ended here. Unfortunately, human greed and ruthlessness personally wrote an even darker new chapter for the prion. Logically, a prion is just a protein. It can't lie dormant like bacteria, nor can it crystallize like viruses. Without human intervention, its ability to spread is ultimately limited. Starting in the 1980s, the UK began widely feeding cattle and sheep so-called feed supplements, made from parts like brains, bones, and offal that locals didn't eat. Worse yet, health authorities were less rigorous in regulating animal feed compared to human food. Because the sources of these feed supplements included parts from livestock carrying various prions, this artificially created cannibalism turned pastures across the UK into arenas for prions. Some speculate that within just a few years, various prions repeatedly infected different cattle and sheep, constantly transforming various proteins in their brains into new prions. Eventually, one prion emerged victorious, the ultimate winner of the arena. Its stability was incredibly strong. It could easily cross species barriers, and even boiling and frying couldn't destroy it. This was the mad cow disease we mentioned at the beginning. The vCJD outbreak that started in the late 20th century infected hundreds of people worldwide and left countless others with unforgettable psychological trauma. Fortunately, by destroying suspected infected animals and products at all costs and implementing stricter regulations, countries ultimately stopped this plague. Perhaps this time, we successfully eliminated this particular manifestation of the prion. But a ghost doesn't disappear easily. Prions still lurk in the brains of every one of us and countless animals. No one knows in what form it will descend upon us again next time, once more seizing our minds and lives amidst countless cries and wails.